This is War of the Suns, Chinese War of Resistance 1937 to 45 by MMP Games. This rules video is looking at zones of control. Now basically any unit that has a stacking point greater than 0, you see this thing on the top right here, is able to exert a zone of control into all the zone the hex it actually occupies and all 6 surrounding hexes. The only exception to that is it can't project a zone of control into a hex from which is separated by a hex side it couldn't cross, or into a hex that is physically unable to move into due to terrain effects, etc. Now, the other type of zone of control in the game is limited zone of control. Now, limited zone of control applies to units that have a stacking point value of 0. There's some artillery units over here, example. Now, a limited zone of control will only affect the actual hex that the unit's in. Now, other units which would normally project a standard zone of control can end up only having a limited zone of control, and this depends on quite a few things. If you're out of supply, for example, or you're using movement mode, which is like a strategic movement mode, which means you can move double your actual movement amount. Units like that will end up, even though they'd normally have a standard zone of control, with a limited one. Now, effective zones of control are mainly on the movement, that if you are moving out of an enemy zone of control, it will cost you 2 extra movement points. Certain units have no zone of control at all. That is naval units, air units, HQs, and any unit that doesn't have a stacking point value on the counter. I can't see any, but there are a few dotted around. Yeah, they do not actually have a zone of control at all, even into their own hex. Okay, just check anything else that we need to be given. Right. Yeah, in the rare cases where you need to decide who controls a particular zone of control, a particular hex, say there's units like the Communists and the Komatang both in the same hex like there are here, you have to agree who actually controls that, and if you don't, it becomes a disputed hex, and a disputed hex, nobody has a zone of control into it. Other effects of a zone of control: enemy units can only be attacked by units exerting a zone of control into their hex, and zone of control cannot cut off an enemy unit. Okay, so they can retreat into a zone of control of a hostile unit.